Gravebend vanished, swallowed by its own sky. But something survived. Now the rain has found a new town and a new voice. This is what happened when I brought a piece of it home. Stay with me, because this storm isn't falling from above. It's rising from within. Part 1. The Bone Left Behind. I didn't mean to bring it home. Not really. I found it by accident. Wedged between a dead tree and the collapsed remnants of what looked like a cellar door, deep in the woods outside what used to be Gravebend. Not that anyone calls it that anymore. Now it's just a blank spot, a smudge on the map. No signs, no roads, just scorched trees and silence. But I'd read about it, the way the town vanished after the incident, unmarked, unacknowledged. All that was left were rumors, rain that wasn't water, voices in static, and something about skin falling from the sky. No one official would talk, but the deeper corners of the internet, they told a different story, that something lived in the clouds above Gravebend, that it breathed. So I went looking. I'm not a ghost hunter or anything. I run a blog. Digital urban exploration, forgotten places, unanswered questions. But that day, I found something real. It was buried under damp soil, no bigger than a toothbrush, a fragment of something hard, pale and curved, bone, but not like any I'd ever seen. It had markings, not etched, not scratched, carved, tiny symbols that pulsed faintly in the light, like they were catching breath. I know how that sounds, but I'm telling you, it was warm, like a living thing that just happened to be shaped like a broken rib. I should have left it there, but I didn't. I wrapped it in an old shirt, shoved it in my backpack, and left the woods as the sun started dipping behind the trees. That night. That's when the rain came. Only the forecast was clear, not a cloud in the sky, but I could hear it, tapping against the windows, slapping the roof like wet meat. And from the ceiling of my room, drip, drip, drip. I looked up. There was no water damage, no pipes above me, just that sound. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the weather app. Clear skies, 0% chance of rain. Temperature, 68 degrees. Calm winds. But outside, the trees were swaying like something was breathing through them. My phone buzzed. A notification from my audio recorder app. Recording saved. 1mel12s. I hadn't touched it. I opened the file. Static. At first. Then something else. Low. Wet. Like someone gurgling under bathwater. And layered under that, a voice. Faint, but unmistakable. It was saying my name. Tessa. Tessa. The same voice I use for voice notes. But I hadn't recorded anything. It kept repeating, growing louder, until it ended with something new. You found the breath. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and slid under my bed. The moment it touched the ground, the dripping stopped. Silence. I reached for the lamp. Light flickered. Then held. The bone sat on my desk, still wrapped in the shirt, but it was wet, as if it had been submerged in something thick. There was no water on the desk, no puddle, just the bone, damp, breathing. I swear to you, I saw it rise and fall, like lungs. I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of my room until the sky began to turn that early morning blue. The phone stayed under the bed. The bone stayed on the desk, and the hum never stopped. It was just low enough to feel instead of hear. Inside the walls, behind my teeth, in the curve of my spine, like something waiting for me to exhale, so it could breathe in. And that was the first night I heard. Rain, inside the house, even with no windows open, no clouds above, and nothing falling from the sky, yet. Part 2. Skin on the walls. It started bleeding on the second night. The bone, the fragment I found in the woods near Gravebend, just sat on my desk for most of the day. I didn't touch it, didn't talk to it. I barely looked at it. Wanted to pretend it was a dream, but it wasn't. Around midnight, I noticed a trail on the wood. A thin, dark line. Not red like blood. Darker. Thicker. More like something between oil and muscle pulp. Raw and glistening. The fragment pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and left behind another smear. I backed away. I didn't scream. Not yet. I just watched. And then I heard it again. The dripping. But it wasn't coming from the ceiling this time. It was coming from the walls. I ran my hand along the plaster. It was soft, warm, slick. My bedroom walls were sweating something dark, something that smelled like old meat left too long in heat. When I flicked on the light, I could see the moisture creeping outward, in patterns, veins almost, red and pink and glistening like skin pulled too thin across something that wanted out. I told myself it was mold, a hallucination, a reaction to stress, maybe spores from the woods. But then I saw the words, not written, not drawn, grown, forming, out of the red pulp just above my bed, ridged in tiny welts that moved as I looked at them. Only 3 letters, J-O, then they sank back into the wall like they'd never been there. I stared at that spot for hours, too afraid to blink, too afraid to sleep, but sleep still came, and that's when the name started. I didn't hear it in the air. I heard it inside my dream, except it didn't feel like a dream. It felt planted, buried in the folds of my subconscious like a splinter. A voice, breathless, wheezing, saying one word, Jordan, over and over, Jordan. I'd never met anyone named Jordan, not that I could remember. When I jolted awake, the lights were off. My phone was dead. The fragment on my desk was gone. I panicked, tore through the drawers, checked the floor. Nothing. Then I saw the mirror. My reflection was already looking at me, even though I hadn't turned toward it yet. I froze. In the dim moonlight, I could make out my face, but the mouth, it was moving, forming syllables silently, mouthing something over and over, like an old video set to loop. I leaned closer. It was saying the name, Jordan. I covered the mirror with a towel. I didn't want to see it anymore, but the shape underneath kept shifting, bulging, breathing. The next morning, I found the fragment again, not on the desk, not on the floor, but pressed gently into the middle of my pillow. And now it wasn't just a smooth shard of carved bone. It had teeth, small circular ridges, too tiny for chewing, too many for comfort. I swear, they were smiling. And when I picked it up, my hand came away red. The skin on my palm was gone, not burned, not cut, just peeled back. And underneath, it looked like my walls, wet, raw, ready. That night, when I checked the mirror again, my reflection didn't move at all. It just smiled and mouthed a new word, something I didn't understand, something that sounded like a warning, but I didn't hear it, because outside, the sky had finally darkened. And this time, the rain wasn't coming from above. It was rising from the floor. Part 3. The basement wore a face. Something's wrong with the basement. It used to be the safest part of the house. Quiet, cold, cramped. Just boxes, old Christmas lights, and the water heater humming like a tired heartbeat. Now, the heartbeat is real. It pulses through the floorboards, slow and wet. I feel it every time I walk through the kitchen. It's in the wood under my toes. A thump, and then a slight flex, like the house is breathing through the foundation. I ignored it at first, after everything else. The bone, the walls, the mirror. I was desperate to pretend things were normal. I told myself it was just plumbing, a busted pipe, maybe rats, Until yesterday, when I saw the door. Let me be clear, this door did not exist before. I've lived in this house since I was 15. I've walked those stairs, stacked those boxes, swept that concrete floor. There were 2 walls. Now there are 3. And in that new wall, tucked between the breaker panel and the shelves of old paint cans, a door. No knob, no hinges. Just a smooth wooden panel, a little darker than the rest. I touched it. It was warm, like skin. I pressed my ear to it, and I swear I heard breathing. Then, it opened. No noise, no creak. Just a sigh of air, as if the house had been waiting for me to notice. I stepped inside. The space beyond wasn't a room, not really. It curved downward like a throat. Damp walls that narrowed the deeper I went. The air felt thick, like soup. My breath fogged instantly. I couldn't see the ceiling. Or maybe there wasn't one. Then I saw them. Mannequins. Rows of them. But they weren't plastic. They weren't dressed up display dummies from a department store. They were wrong, flesh-colored but not smooth, veined, sagging, shaped like people who had been poured into their form and left to solidify. Each one had eyes, but the eyes were sewn shut. Tiny black threads looped through swollen lids, like someone wanted to keep them asleep or quiet. And they were all facing the same direction. Up toward me. None of them moved. But I felt them thinking, like they were waiting for a cue to start. Some wore clothes, old funeral attire, black dresses with moth-bitten lace, suits that had been through rot. One had a scarf around its throat, stiff with dried blood. Then I saw her, second row, far left, wearing my mother's cardigan, the green one. The one she wore on rainy days. The one she let me borrow when I was 10 and sick with the flu. The one that still smells like peppermint and ash. I walked closer. Its hands, her hands, were stitched at the fingers. Like someone had tried to clap them together, then thought better of it halfway through. The head was tilted. Its mouth wasn't, sewn shut like the eyes. It was open, just a little. Enough to see that the tongue had been removed. In its place, a small sliver of bone, just like the one I found in the woods. I backed away, turned to run, but the doorway was gone. There was only a wall now, warm, beating. Something wet ran down my cheek. I wiped it. Blood. I hadn't been hurt, but something inside, this place had touched me, marked me. That night, I slept with the lights on. I dreamed of rows of mouths, silent, full of teeth, but no tongues, whispering without sound. They were praying, not to a god, to the house. When I woke up, the mirror was cracked. The fragment of bone was gone from my pillow, and someone had laid my mother's cardigan, neatly folded at the foot of my bed. Part 4. Gravebend's memory. I found his voice buried in a folder labeled Corrupt. It was tucked deep in a subdirectory on my backup drive, the one I hadn't touched since last summer. I was going through old recordings, trying to find proof. Anything I could use to prove that what's happening isn't just a breakdown, that I'm not hallucinating, that the house really is changing, that I really did see mannequins with stitched eyes, and one that wore my mother's face. I don't remember downloading the file, but it was there, titled simply, J. Heller, final.wavi knew the name, Jordan Heller, the meteorologist who disappeared during the original Gravebend incident. The man whose drone footage showed something floating in the clouds, bodies stitched together, fused into a single pulsing mass. He was never found. Some say he became part of it. Others say he tried to destroy it. But when I played the file, all I heard was distortion, a low hum, occasional clicking, a wet, rhythmic pulse, like a giant heart muffled in a jar of static, and under that, a voice. His voice, warped, looping, saying something I couldn't make out. I ran it through an audio filter. Nothing. Still noise. I reversed the track, and the second it started playing, the temperature in the room dropped. The house groaned. The walls flexed. And then, his words. I left part of me behind. Find it before it grows. Then silence. I froze. My hand hovered over the pause button because I could still hear it. Pulsing, but not from the file, from the house, from the basement, from inside the walls. The house had already found it, or maybe it had never let it go. I checked the fragment of bone. It wasn't where I'd left it. It was on my desk now, perfectly centered, resting atop a crumpled piece of paper. I didn't remember printing anything, but the paper had words, scanned from some old report, maybe a field journal, faint handwriting in block letters. Ascension events must be prevented. Fragments grow when named. That's all it said, when named. I whispered the name I heard in my dreams, the one my mirror kept mouthing. Jordan. The bone pulsed. It opened. I didn't know bone could open, but it split along one edge, revealing something soft inside. Flesh, still moving, still wet. There were teeth growing inside it now. Small human teeth. Baby teeth. I dropped it. The floor trembled, just once. Then I heard the rain inside the house, but this time it wasn't falling. It was rising from the vents, from the outlets, from the cracks in the tile. I ran to the kitchen. The refrigerator door was open, not swung open, peeling, like a mouth unhinging. Inside, not food, not shelves, just a tunnel, throbbing and lined with tissue, leading downward. I slammed it shut, blinked. It was back to normal. For a moment, I questioned everything. But then I heard the audio again. I hadn't pressed play, but it started on its own. Jordan's voice, reversed again, but now clearer, urgent. The breath remembers. And you brought it home. You are its memory now. Then silence. And behind me, on the wall above my bed, letters formed again in welts of muscle. You grew it. I haven't slept since. I don't think I can, because every time I close my eyes, I see the sky above Gravebend. I see what floated there. I see Jordan's face, in pieces, stitched into something much larger. And I hear his voice, inside my own breath. Part 5. Ascension below. It started with the water rising, in reverse. Tiny beads of liquid climbing up the glass on my windows. Streams running upward along the kitchen walls. Rain, falling the wrong way. At first, I thought it was some kind of trick, a pressure leak or maybe a gas hallucination. But then I stepped into the living room, and the rain was hovering there, mid-air, like strings of glistening sinew, slowly lifting toward the ceiling, as if gravity had been rewritten. It wasn't rain. It was thick, warm, almost alive. The kind of wet that leaves residue behind. I ran to the attic. I don't know why. Maybe instinct, maybe something pulling me there. But I knew something was wrong above me. And I was right. The attic, it wasn't an attic anymore. The ceiling had opened, not collapsed. Opened, like the inside of a throat. The wooden beams were gone. In their place, thick cords of muscle stretched across a steeple-shaped chamber. It rose far beyond the house's original height, a cathedral of flesh and bone, pulsing like a living lung. Something was growing up there. At the center, hovering like a suspended heart, was the fragment, the bone, now the size of a cinder block, slick and veined, wrapped in a membrane that shimmered with blood and reflection. It beat once, and the lights in the house died. Every bulb, every screen, gone in a blink, and in the distance, The sky over town flickered, then collapsed into shadow. The entire power grid was gone. I heard them next. Outside, feet on gravel, shuffling, slow. I went to the window and pulled the curtain back. People lining up, one by one, stretching down the sidewalk and into the street like a funeral procession made of wax dolls. Each of them held something. Bowls, metal, glass, porcelain. They cradled them like gifts, held them up toward my house. Some were weeping, others smiling, and every one of them was soaked, but not from outside rain, from within. Their skins steamed, their mouths opened just slightly, like they were catching breath in time with my heartbeat. Then I saw him, my brother. He was third in line. His eyes were open, but he didn't see me. Not really. Not like he used to. His bowl was filled with something, red, thick, almost gelatinous. It pulsed with a rhythm I recognized, my own. I banged on the glass, screamed his name. No reaction. Then, as one, they all looked up. To the attic, their heads tilted backward, eyes rolled white, and mouths opened in a single silent scream. And from above, from the steeple of my house, a single note played. Low, wet, like the sound of lungs trying to sing. It vibrated through the walls, through my teeth, down into the marrow of my bones. I stumbled back, and in that moment, I knew. Ascension wasn't in the sky anymore. It was happening below, beneath the floor, beneath the town. In the hollow spaces we forget exist until something calls up from them, and we answer. I locked every door, boarded every window, but it doesn't matter. They're still out there, waiting, holding their bowls like offerings. And from the attic, I hear the organ beginning to play again, a hymn made of breath and blood and something much older than prayer. And I'm starting to realize this isn't a haunting. This is a homecoming. Part 6, The Storm That Lives in Me. It spoke to me last night, not with words, not out loud, but inside my breath. Each inhale, warmer. Each exhale, not mine. I don't know how long I've been inside the attic now. Time doesn't work here anymore. What used to be wooden beams and insulation is now a cathedral of pulsing red walls, arteries threading through every corner of the roof. The organ at the center beats with a rhythm that's become my own. I can't remember the last time I blinked, or how long it's been since the rain stopped, because now it doesn't fall. It rises from me. They called it the flesh engine in the files I found, a name passed down from voices that were never meant to be heard, a machine made of memory and meat, fueled by belief and sacrifice. And it needs a heart to beat. Jordan said no at first, but he didn't leave this thing behind, not fully. I saw pieces of him in the attic's walls, a jawline, a single eye blinking beneath stained glass muscle. He became part of it, and now, so can I. That's the choice. Let it die. Let this living church of marrow and storm collapse in on itself. Let the town dry out, rot in silence, and forget how to dream, or breathe life into it again, become its core, its rhythm, its storm. My hands don't shake anymore. They hum. There's lightning behind my ribs. The bone fragment I once found in the woods now floats above me, a halo of cartilage and memory. It pulses in sync with my heartbeat. And below, outside, they wait. Hundreds of them. The townspeople. The faithful. The forgotten. They line the street like a congregation with no pastor. They hold bowls. And in each one, a piece of me. Hair, skin, teeth, dreams, all harvested from the house that grew around my name. I step toward the organ. It opens, not with hinges, but like a wound ready to welcome back its missing limb. Inside, I see myself, younger, smiling, unaware. I step in. The walls sigh. Outside, thunder cracks, not in the clouds, but beneath the soil. The air is heavy with the scent of rain that hasn't fallen yet. And then, it begins. The storm. Not in the sky. Inside. Me. My lungs rattle. My teeth click with static. My veins shimmer like lightning trapped in red glass. The house grows taller. The steeple stretches. My chest expands with the breath of something ancient, something grateful. And from above, from the clouds, they begin to whisper, 1,000 mouths wet with wind. Gravebend was only the beginning. Gravebend was only the beginning. Gravebend was only the beginning. And I realize this wasn't a curse. It was a calling. I wasn't infected. I was chosen. So if you're out there listening, if you're watching the clouds darken without a drop falling, if your phone hums with the wrong name, if your mirror smiles first, it's already begun. There's a storm building, and this time, it remembers you. The storm has chosen its new heart, but storms never stay in one place. If you felt the pulse behind the words, you're already part of it. There's another town waking up, and the next story begins with a scream buried in concrete. So if you're not afraid to follow the rain, like, share, and subscribe, because the next breath might not be yours.